Good morning. I'd like to call the regularly scheduled Board of Selectmen meeting for Monday, October 7th, 2019 to order. First order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. Charlie?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Charlie. Item 2, public forum, limited to 3 minutes on any agenda item. Is there anyone who wishes to address the board? Right.
I'm not sure if this is the appropriate time to talk about something that's on the agenda for today.
Right.
I can't stay for the meeting.
Okay.
I noticed there was something on the library's involvement.
Correct.
So all I wanted to say was this.
Yep.
You got to be either in or out. Sure.
Yeah.
There's two types of library programs, ones that we sponsor and support, and ones that where an outside group essentially books the room.
Right.
So I'm not for or against the proposal today, but I do want to emphasize that there won't be any library staff on board for it.
Wonderful. Thank
It's
you.
a Sunday, we're limited staff already, so it's just going to be their program completely.
Great, Rob. Thank you. And I know there was some concern about that particular item on the agenda, so thank you for that clarification.
If Rob can't stay for the meeting, is there somebody that will represent the library for that item later
Mike,
on?
I mean,
Yeah.
what number is it on the agenda?
Can we move?
It is, let's see.
I'm the rep for the group.
Okay, for the group, but is there somebody representing the library that
You
can?
know what, I can make it happen if it's.
Okay.
Hang on. I'll make one quick call and I'll be back.
I'm sorry, I wish I.
That's all right.
I wish I.
That's fine.
Move the item up.
No, 15 anything else, anyone else on public forum? Anything else? Nothing. Item 3, approved minutes, it's September 16th, 2019, regular meeting minutes. Is there a motion?
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
Any comments, questions, changes, et cetera?
I had a question, I wasn't here, the minutes were very helpful. I see there was some discussion about the splash pad down at Jacobs Beach, right?
Yes.
Was there any comment or indication about what impact that would have on parking down there?
No, that was not discussed.
Yeah, I don't think we're at that point. We're
So
just
the zoning stuff still has to work its way through.
Yes.
Just
all the-
more
all the land
design
use.
and
Very
prep
early.
and that kind of stuff. yeah.
So just as a general concept, particularly with regard to the fact that it looks like it's gonna be community funded.
Yeah.
Yeah. They were asking us to put the money forward for the design, but they
To look
expect to
into
fully
it, yeah.
raise the funds and pay them back.
For the
and
construction,
continue to
which
raise
I
the
got
funds,
the gist
yeah.
of. Okay, good, fabulous,
No,
okay.
not
so-
only, not only the construction, but the design as well.
And the design, even better. All right, so all those issues with regard to appropriateness of location will be addressed at land use.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we simply
And then-
authorize them to put something together for us to decide.
Yeah, great, thanks.
Anything else? Nope. Call a question, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain.
Okay. Recusals? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 4, presentation from Guilford Day. Who's making it? Bo? You gonna start?
I'm
You
going
got-
to start.
Okay. And Peter?
I'm going to jump in a minute.
We have this all scripted?
We do,
Good,
we do.
good.
Actually, I was the first chairman of Guilford Day,
Right.
and Lisa Ott and Pete Palumbo have been the chairman for a long, long time. I don't
Right.
even know how many years.
It's a lifetime appointment, I heard, right?
But I wanted to give some context for this discussion, because we've got a good story here, something you should really be proud of, your agency, Guilford Youth and Family Services. They've done, I think, just a terrific job with prevention, and we probably have the best prevention program for youth addiction to alcohol and other substances in the state of Connecticut. We're well recognized by prevention professionals throughout the state as having an outstanding program. We've done a bunch of really unique stuff. And the thing that we found is that youth leadership is absolutely the key, that having the kids take ownership of the issue, make the point that most kids are living clean, that it's not just a few nerds who aren't going to the parties on Friday nights, but that's the norm in Guilford, that it's okay to be clean and sober, has really made a big difference in the town. Lisa's going to talk about the data. Pete's going to talk about bit about what the kids have done. But I wanted to start out by talking about the scope of the problem. I think as a society, we tend to believe that drug use, alcohol use by kids is just par for the course. It's part of growing up. It's, just something we accept and don't pay any attention to. I want you to think for a minute, if we were losing 100 kids a year to being kidnapped, we'd be going crazy. We'd be absolutely nuts about it. We'd have vigilantes out there with guns trying to stop it. But we have, as a society, nationwide, kind of accepted that our kids can be destroyed by drugs and alcohol, and it's perfectly okay. So that's the context that this discussion is in. Prevention is not a sexy topic because you don't see the kids who have been prevented. You don't know who's stayed clear, who might have gone down that nightmare path. But it's absolutely the case that when a kid gets addicted to cocaine, which happened to my daughter as my youngest daughter, not Lisa, as a 10th grader, has a devastating impact on the kid, which most people would recognize. Less recognized is the impact on the family. Less recognized is the difficulty of recovery, getting yourself out of that hole and onto a productive life, and the expense for the family of dealing with it. Now, our family was really lucky. Our daughter made her way out of it. She's done just great. I'm very proud of her. But it cost us enormously in the emotional burden of it and the expense of it. And wanted you all to be thinking about that as you hear about what a great job Lynn Landry, Carol Regan, and our new person, Susie White, have done on prevention and what they've done for our community in coming up with a truly terrific prevention program. So with that sort of context for you, I'll bounce it to Lisa, who has the data.
You got it.
So we've got a lot of really good news. All of the blue arrows are good change. You'll see that there's lower 30-day use for alcohol, cigarettes, marijuana, and prescription drugs. Perception of risk for both prescription drugs and alcohol is going up. But the two red arrows you see there are that kids' perception of risk of tobacco and marijuana have both gone down. And it's been pretty significant for marijuana since 2010, and we believe this is due to all of the information in the media about legalization and all of that kind of thing. Percentage of parental disapproval is going up, and we think that parents are having a lot more conversations with their kids. And also perception of peer disapproval is going up, which I think is very interesting given that the perception of risk is going down. So that,
You said two schools, so this must be Adamson High School?
yes, we survey all kids grades 7 through 12.
That was my next question. So these results are the results of a survey?
Yes,
What was the percentage of the survey return?
we have a total of 530, they take it during school. So the population is 530 at Adams and 954 at the high school, which gives us a total of 1,484.
Okay, and how many returned? I mean, everybody, all 1,400 were required to take the survey?
They take it on computers during class. And then what happens is the Search Institute, which administers the survey for us, they do this in communities all over the United States. They have a lot of, I can't think of the word, tools in place, thank you, to really look at the questions, the way they're answered, and if there are kids that are, answering
Playing.
Yep.
exactly, then they toss those, and Guilford actually has a lower rate of having our surveys thrown out than nationwide. It's about 9%, and our rate is about 5%. And they ask the questions different ways, and they look at it, they analyze it with the computer and that kind of thing.
So it is a nationally run survey, these are the results.
Yes.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
More than just Guilford then.
Well, no, this date is just.
This date is
This date is
just
just
Test,
Guilford.
Guilford.
national test.
But,
I'm saying.
It's an interesting thing.
right,
That's great.
yeah, they're out of Minnesota, and they're really, really.
Well, the bigger the
top-of-the-field
population, the
researchers.
more valid. supposedly,
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
That brings up an interesting question. You may be getting to this shortly, but how do we stack up against other communities? Have we looked at that data? Is that further down the line here?
We actually, we were trying not to take too much of your time today,
Don't
so
worry about
this is our only actual slide for
Right.
you. But I've got a lot more information in our report, and I'll be happy to
That would be great.
get more information for you and things. One of the big pieces that we look at comparing Guilford to nationwide is the number of assets that kids have. There are 40 assets. If kids have a pretty good percentage of them, it's likely they're going to turn out strong and healthy and resilient. And conversely, if they have a low percentage, they're at risk not only for substance use, but bullying, anxiety and depression, early onset of sexual relationships, all sorts of things. And so there's a ton of really, really interesting data about what's on kids' minds, what they're doing, all of that kind of thing that is in the report. And then we're also able to look at what assets we do really well as a community, where our challenges lie, and then the average number of assets that kids have, which can give us an indication of where we can build and really dig in and do that prevention.
Is that report or an edited version of the report available, whether through the Board of Ed website or town website, or is that appropriate? I mean, a couple of these things are perception of parent involvement and that type of thing, and it sounds like that if Guilford parents want to be involved and understand this issue, it'd be neat to have a spot where they could go in their spare time to delve into it a little bit.
We post all of our survey results dating back to 2010 on the Guilford Day website, which is, it's worth it.
Is there any way to
guilford.org.
connect that to Board of Ed and or to town?
I think so.
Or would that be appropriate?
Tracy, we
I don't
can provide a link to it off of our
Maybe
our
just
page.
a link, yeah.
And it's
Because-
also on the Board of Ed through Lori Hahn. She can post it on the site that they use too.
Well, I mean, even like our minutes today, I mean, somebody might be watching our minutes today, to attach a link to these minutes might make some sense, so that people wanted more information or a deeper dive, be readily available.
Tracy would take care of that. Thank you.
I did want to just give a few statistics of the less good news, because this is a really serious topic that we need to be thinking about. Question 120 on the survey is, when I am an adult, I'm sure I will have a good life. And 4% of high school kids disagreed, and 3% strongly disagreed. So that's actually another almost 70 kids that really are concerned about that. And at Adams, it's another 22 kids. In my town or city, I feel like I matter to people. 143 kids disagreed, and 48 kids strongly disagreed. So that's something that we really need to be thinking about and working on. And we're also seeing our anxiety and depression indicators rising. So that's something that as a group we're really trying to tackle. We want that to be a real community issue because that's not something that just happens at school. That's something that we really are thinking about how we can address to help kids feel strong and healthy and resilient. So I'm going to have Pete talk about what we're doing in that department, but if you have any more questions, I'm happy
I
to
assume
answer
the
them.
survey's anonymous.
Yes, yeah, they absolutely
The thing
are.
that worries me is, those two last results that you talk about. I mean, you always hear after a tragedy, oh, it was so obvious, somebody's reaching out or sending a message or something, but Pete will talk to that with the student side.
There's an odd correlation or disconnect actually between the alcohol and the marijuana perception of risk. Alcohol, which is already legal, you've seen a significant increase in the perception of risk with alcohol among kids. Literally, almost a 25% increase. Marijuana, on the other hand, which is currently illegal but about to become legal, has dropped. All right, and I think you mentioned that that may be related to the fact that there's discussion about the legalization. So assume for a moment, and I know this is contrary to the position that you folks have been advocating for, which is legalization. You're strongly against legalization. For that reason, okay. Assuming, if you will, for a moment, that Connecticut will eventually fall in line with a lot of the other states, what programs or how are you going to change that number as alcohol has changed over the past 8 years? All right, what tools are going to be there to show that there is in fact a risk, a significant risk? Because again, I don't mean to be the voice of
No,
doom,
absolutely.
but there is a strong likelihood that legalization will happen in this state at some point. So what are the next steps towards creating that same increase in perception of risk with marijuana?
Educating parents, kids, the general public is going to be a critical piece of this. But it definitely is an uphill battle because big marijuana is what's making the push. They're saying it's healthy, and that's what kids want to hear. So, certainly MAD's campaign against drunk driving has worked. We've seen a decrease in drunk driving accidents since they've really done their public education, but that's got to be a critical piece of it. Certainly I absolutely look to the experts to really.
But I guess if I could ask the question a different way, why is alcohol perceived to be marijuana perceived to be less of a risk than alcohol?
I think because of what Lisa said, there's been such a push in mainstream for education on alcohol over years and years and years.
Years, right.
And I think it's finally, people are understanding the risk. Marijuana is so new and it's not there yet.
Yeah, the education.
All
programs
people are
are-
hearing is that, oh, it's safe, you can, it helps this or that, so.
Your organization is basically local, where the marijuana push obviously is being driven by a bigger dollar group
Absolutely.
of people that see it as a big income stream.
Right.
But your group is it mostly local, or do you have any statewide or national connections?
Just this past year, we, during the last legislative session, we had some other towns' prevention councils join together with us, and that was a tremendous help. They really had some great ideas, mobilized things in a different way than we were able to, and that really made a huge difference to us. But
there is no umbrella of
Well,
organizations.
we have, we're part of the Connecticut Association of Prevention Professionals, And underneath that is something called CT-SAM, so Connecticut Smart Approaches to Marijuana. And we've been doing a lot of work in that realm, and just this past year, we actually had National SAM come on board and help us out up at the Capitol. So, you know, when they saw that we needed some extra support, they came in and helped with that push as well, so.
Is the funding local, grants? I mean, that's what it comes down to. I mean, you're fighting a very large lobby group with marijuana in the state. Do you have the funding, or do you have access to the funding to combat something like that?
You know, I think everybody's kind of operating under the work that they do anyway, and then combining together to be a bigger force. I mean, we have a Connecticut opioid prevention grant right now that helps us with the opioid piece. So, you know, there's a lot of different layers.
Okay.
But the answer is no, we're totally outspent, totally outgunned.
No question.
But
Yeah.
we've had a huge impact, and last year, the Black and Hispanic Ministers Group jumped in and pounded on the city legislators, and that had a big impact on
Well, you know, and that's what I appreciate. You know, locally, I know of your group, and I know your work, and I'm watching, you know, and you see it happening and everything, but it's Guilford. I mean, you know, we're one of what, 60? And,
Right.
Just one other question. Vaping, coming up.
It's actually on the next slide.
It is perfect timing.
Yes.
Because was it 2 weeks ago, Christine Cohen
Yes.
held a briefing, and that's having a significant risk factor as well. So, all right, there we go.
Absolutely. If you look at our vaping statistics, what you'll see is a significant drop. The first question is people who have not used in the past 30 days. So you'll see a drop in the number who have not used. And then the risk of harm actually is growing. People are, and this is before, of course, any of the stuff that's been in the media lately took place, because this survey was administered last fall. Kids are starting to get more educated about it, and certainly, hopefully, we would love to have seen that number really go up after everything that's been in the media lately. And then kids do realize that their parents don't want them vaping, but that isn't transmitting. I have talked with the school resource officer at the high school, and he said it's very, very, very difficult for kids once they do get hooked to quit. That the level of nicotine in a vape cartridge is equivalent to 20 cigarettes. So they're getting just an enormous blast of nicotine
How
at
long
an age.
does a vape cartridge last?
I mean,
I think it depends on how often
How
you're
much-
using it.
Well, of course, but I mean, you say it compares to a pack of cigarettes, the amount of nicotine. Would a cartridge last a person a day, or would they use multiple cartridges in a day? The worst case scenario, could somebody actually use a cartridge a day?
I mean, my answer to that would be a guess, but I would say yes, and some don't. So I think
Of
it
course,
would be,
no,
yeah.
yeah.
So it's a pack a day habit.
Yeah.
And what's happening is they're getting it at a time when their brains are developing. So 90% of addiction occurs during adolescence. So whether you're getting addicted to nicotine or any other substance, it's priming your brain for later addiction as well. So that's a real concern. I know for the schools, they've been working really hard to figure out how to address it. Because, I don't know if you've ever seen them, they actually can plug right into a laptop, so it looks like a USB drive, a flash drive. So it's hard to catch, never mind if they're in their pocket or something like that. So we've been working on presenting the risks to the kids. We did a presentation at Adams last year, and we're hoping to get the kids early before they get started in order to bring the risk down.
Just because of my own unfamiliarity about it,
Mhm.
what's a cartridge cost compared to a pack of cigarettes?
Connecticut actually, as of October 1st, I should mention, went to tobacco 21, so you're not allowed to buy it anymore. What's good is that means that the seniors of the high school can't buy it and sell it at a black market rate. A cartridge is about $15, is that right?
I said the price of a pack of cigarettes.
Cigarettes, $15.
And then kids
But
also.
the stores can still sell it. I mean, I know they're not supposed to sell it to 21 or whatever that age is,
Right.
but it still exists in the stores at this point in time.
Right. And you can also pick them up on Amazon too, which is,
Next day, Prime.
right. So
Tragic.
that's real concern as well, because the forum that Christine Cohen and actually Sean Scanlon was with his wife that day, so he couldn't make it, but Vinnie Candelar was there as well.
That's right.
What they were talking about is figuring out what Connecticut is going to do, whether to follow suit with Massachusetts and ban entirely or not, and what they're trying to work out is how to address the issue.
Okay.
The lower right question. My assumption is that rate is low because this is predominantly among kids who have vaped. Those who responded to that question.
No, that's
Or is that everyone?
everyone.
That's everyone.
Hopefully that number is headed in the right direction with the recent
look
media
now,
coverage,
yeah.
but
Right.
as these are our last solid results, and that number is very low and
It's
certainly very
Yeah.
concerning.
Yeah.
Good. Peter, we cut you off.
Pete's gonna give us some good news.
Thank you, Lisa.
Oh, you're very welcome, thank you.
So, hope it never does get legalized.
Agreed.
I mean, I'll start with a thank you to, Board of Selectmen, Board of Education, Guilford Youth and Family Services. I mean, their job and a lot of things that would come in front of your board and Board of Education are going to be really challenging if that happens. I mean, a lot of work will go into monitoring and not teaching at that point. We've seen studies from Colorado, et cetera, so I don't want to go into that, but our job will become very challenging, and it's really and our job as volunteers is and looking at the assets and working on the 4 of the 40 that we have the time to do is something that we work really hard at, as you know. Biggest thing I wanted to share with you is youth leadership. I can't say that enough. Youth leadership, and youth leadership. I mean, in the high school, when we get a survey or our survey results back, and we talk to our youth leaders in the high school, and we have our other groups in the community, they give us such great information, their own feeling on it. Some of the studies that we've seen that they have been able to go through and look at brain development, et cetera, the youth are fabulous. Adams Middle School is just starting a day club. Guilford High School has youth leaders, and we've actually combined 2 groups in the high school so we could have more youth together to work on these issues. Youth have come up with the ideas of the purple flags. As you see those flags around the community, that was youth led. That's 6-7 years ago. And if you have all seen the locations where those are, and you see they're in big numbers. We don't put 2 or 3 out front. But that's representing just on a whole, and it's not a counted number, but it's just for people to go, wow, that's a lot of purple flags. That's the majority of our youth that are clean. And that's the message we want to get out there, and that purple represents that to our community and to our kids. And when the kids see that, they feel good about that. We've had 2 road races. We've had a glow run, which is inside the fairgrounds, which generally seems to attract Adams age kids and families, Baldwin age kids and families. It's a fun evening. It's engaged with Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts. Parents run it right at dusk. It's a lot of fun. Our color run has become more and more successful. And the kids, again, this was their idea. We're talking about a road race for a fundraiser, and I think it was one of Lisa's children that came up with the idea of, well, let's do a color run. And we were wondering, well, what is that? And it's become a real fun event for families to come to. Glow run, color run, window painting around our community. You see the windows being painted. Again, Youth and Family Services, organizing. Susie out there helping, with paint packets and engaging with the kids. One of the biggest, most fun things that I get to work on is the community values youth asset. Because I believe, and we believe, that the more they get to engage with the adults in the community, the more they feel valued in our community. So that's a fun one. Also, trunk or treat, when they come right down Park Street and kids get to come out. Again, families. These are all things that as a group we've been able to do, and so many volunteers. I want to just share one other thing Lisa talked about and got into a little bit, is that depression, anxiety that I'm sure you all have heard about, and talk about numbers from the percentages. So Board of Education has really done a great job at looking at social and emotional learning and bringing the faculty, teachers, volunteers like ourselves up with social and emotional learning, and hoping that as we go into elementary schools now, and that social and emotional learning will carry them into Baldwin, Adams, and into the high school. We don't have to do as much in the don't do drugs, don't smoke marijuana, et cetera, et cetera. I think as kids' self-esteem start to change and raise, and they make those better decisions just based on those types of things. Last year, during our Purple Week, or Project Purple, we were able to, and we visit every school. I mean, we were able to go into elementary schools, Baldwin, Adams, and the high school, and do something in that week with the youth in our community. Calvin Leet was one that really kind of stuck out in my head last year. They took a half an hour a week and kind of dimmed the lights, quieted the school. Kids would gather in their classroom with their teachers. So in a safe surrounding, just kind of, and talk about things, talk about words like compassion, perseverance. What's it like? What could your friend be dealing with? How would you work on that with whether it's a second grader or a fourth grader, and they have different perceptions on what that is to them and how they would deal with that. It teaches a culture of kindness, how to manage their emotions. They come in and they're excited about something. Sometimes that's a lot for a little kid. Or if they're angry about something that they don't understand, that's also a lot for a little kid. So last year we were able to, and again, from the support of this community, town, Board of Education, take our youth leaders from Guilford High School into the other schools during the day and work with the young kids to talk to them about what these things mean. What's perseverance? What does it mean if you get cut from the soccer team tryouts, but keep trying? And our youth leaders would sit there and talk to the kids about how hard it was for this one particular person, was a young lady, how hard it was for her to get cut for the tryouts, but she did not give up. She kept going. So these kids in Cox were working on that word of perseverance, and they wanted those examples. They love when we bring the kids into the community. So I hope it doesn't get legalized. It would really challenge everyone here in this room and Youth and Family Services, which again, I'm sure then would challenge our community.
Really?
But that's some of the good stuff that we have that goes on in this town. And thank you very much for all you do.
Thank you for what you do as well, all of you. Any further questions or comments?
Room for it. Thank you for coming.
What can we do?
Oh, perception, right? You've heard that word, and how kids see things. As adults, community values youth. You know, it's hard sometimes to just put aside what our belief system is into what's better for the youth. I think Bo talked about it, and Lisa talked a little bit about it. We have Yale researchers come to talk to us at the high school about vaping. We have Yale doctors talk to us about the brain development in our youth. And the kids actually get to hear that firsthand. So they're starting to make that decision on their own. Not, well,
It's
if
bad for you.
yeah, if us as adults telling them it's bad for them, they're actually seeing that information for themselves. That's really important. And again, perception, they need to figure that out on their own. So as adults in the community, I think the most important thing is listen to the youth. And you want to be involved with Day or any of the volunteer stuff we do, we ask people, we go to back to school night at all of the schools in the town, ask for help for volunteers, for parents to come in and help with these road races, and or if you have a profession, you are a Yale researcher, like we've had one come forward and help us with this stuff. They give us a lot of great information, a lot of good things to work on.
To Susan's point, I understand what you're saying on a personal level. I think what we were reaching out for is there something at this point in time that we as a board officially could help with.
Well, yeah, Bo, I mean.
Or just wait for future developments
I
type
mean,
thing.
We, again, if we have organizations like the principal in Cheshire, the group that we went to in Cheshire to speak to, what's that abbreviation of that organization, of principals? CAST. Yeah, so for instance, we reach out to organizations like this. So as the selectmen of our community, I mean, anytime we can get groups of people that are heard at the state level in the capital, that's really important for us. So when we have groups like principal organizations or police chiefs across the state of Connecticut, or other people that know what this could bring to our community if we legalize marijuana.
Okay, I
That helps.
appreciate that, and I understand that part. I guess my question is there any action required or that would be helpful from us today? No. I mean, you haven't come with any requests for any of that type.
No, we specifically wanted to be the ones speaking, not Lynn and not Carol, not Susie, because we can say what a great job they are doing. So one thing is recognize you've got an agency that has done something truly outstanding on prevention, and part of that is not saying this is a town problem that we have to take care of, we town employees. They've got it organized so that in Guilford, this is seen as a community problem. The schools are working hard on it, town agency is working hard on it, but they've got it set up so we're trying to pull in lots of volunteers. So that's one thing. But I think we can brainstorm ideas. You guys are the leaders, and we need to find ways for our community leaders to take advantage of teaching opportunities and to say, we're losing kids. We have kids who end up dying in their 20s. We have kids who end up in Seattle as drug addicts. We have kids who end up addicted to marijuana, screwed up at school, not much good as an employee. We as leaders need to speak out about this and look for opportunities to make Guilford different, change our culture. This is not something I'm not that I'm carried away. But I love what you're saying, Charlie. It's,
Okay, all right.
yeah.
I understand what you're saying, first of all. Okay.
Well, I think at a base level, our continued support of Guilford Youth and Family Services, funding for these kind of programs, and just support within the community, and affirmation that what you guys are doing is very valuable to this community. Those are platitudes, but the fact of the matter is, we are going to continue, well, my intention is to continue to fund youth and family services
Yeah, that's
at a level
the
that will
takeaway.
allow them to continue to participate in these programs. So, it's a.
Well, here's another thought. About a month ago, we were asked by a resident to, as a board, weigh in on the issue of tolls. And we discussed that, and we felt that it was not really appropriate for us, considering the framework of how that whole thing works. Not having given this a lot of thought, I wonder if there's a way that we could consider taking whatever steps we might need to take as a Board of Selectmen to do something like that with regard to legalization of marijuana. Whether that's educating ourselves as to the science of it, or feedback from constituents, or whatever we need to do to be able to consider doing that. Is that-
I think, to my point earlier, I think if we allow this information and this report and survey results to be as readily available as possible, whether on the town and Board of Ed websites and public information, I think that's valuable. And to Susan's point, when the issue comes to the forefront, and/or, even if it becomes more in the media type thing, maybe that's the time to take the same type of stand, or not, I don't know, lack of stand that we took during the tolls. I think at this point in time, one positive action we could do just is allowing this information to be as readily available as possible to the entire community, because, the perception of parents, it's a big deal. I mean, parents are going to, hopefully they have an influence on their children. So the more information we get to them, because they're just getting feedback from their book clubs or whatever they, wherever they get their information, adding actual results to something like this could be of some value.
Good. Anybody else?
Good.
Thank you very much
Thank you all.
for the briefing.
Thank you.
There's some copies as well.
Great,
Thank
thank you. That's great.
Yeah, and electronic copy for you? Okay. Carolyn, if you could get an electronic copy over to Tracy as well, that'd be great. Thank you. Two in there, yeah. We good? All right, item 5, Police Department. Lieutenant Tim Bernier, consider and take possible action on the purchase of warning lights and scaffolding services off of the state contract.
Tough act to follow.
Yeah.
How are you? Morning. So we have a item that we budgeted for in capital. We're looking to purchase a variable message board.
Okay.
One clarification on the agenda here is it's not a state contract, and they have a state vendor number. They're not under state contracts. We do have multiple bids from multiple locations. One came in under spec, and one came in over this particular facility, who is a distributor for the company Wanko that makes the sign out of Hamden, was able to give us.
Right.
Do we have one of these now?
We do not, and the benefit of us having it is it would not only benefit us for any immediate public information, road closures, hazards, parking issues, but it's also obviously be available to the town for a variety of things.
Is this portable?
Yes, it's a trailer.
Trailer.
So anything
Okay,
with
because
a
we
with a
went
class
through
2
this
trailer
cycle
hitch.
once, we were gonna put a sign
Up by Adams.
over by Adams
I
or
remember
someplace
that.
that was more permanent, and that just didn't seem to be, it was
We-
problematic.
This was discussed at the budget talk.
Yeah,
It was in your.
Right.
It was in capital, correct.
Yeah.
Right, I think it's a great idea, especially whether there's emergency or, is it only going to be for emergency police?
Yeah, it'd be for a variety of things. Like I said, it'd be available to all departments townwide. So if there's road closures, if there's for the parade, for the fair, indicating that Whitfield Street
How
is
about
closed.
something as simple as get out the vote?
Sorry.
How about simply vote on November 5th.
I don't see why it couldn't be used for something like that, man. Whatever restrictions we would have for putting it where we're going to put it on
Well,
top
that
of the
was gonna
green.
be my next
Something like
question.
that would be the next thing to tackle.
But that's my next question. I guess the police department's gonna be controlling the message.
If oversight ultimately, but if the fire department's using it, I mean, they would control the message. If Parks and Rec was using it, I'm sure they would
All right,
control
so
the
say
message.
the town wanted to put a message on the board, we would send it to the police department and they would
Sure.
post it. Okay,
Sure.
all right. How about zoning?
It's the sign in and of itself. It would be no bigger than a parking spot. As
Is
far as-
zoning approval required?
I don't know the answer to that, to be honest with you. I don't.
I know that was the
It's
issue with the
temporary. It's
last
not. It's
one.
not
I
a
mean,
permanent fixture.
Yeah,
It's not
yeah, I would think on a trail, whatever, I think.
Being
have to
being
follow
trailer
it.
mounted, it's never permanently placed anywhere. I would assume not, but I guess I don't know the firm answers to that.
How big is it?
The board in itself, the display portion is a 4x8 sheet plywood more or less, but it turns sideways and it folds pretty small. And it trailers behind any vehicle with a Class 2 trailer hitch. It would be no bigger than a parking spot.
I support it, and I think it's a great idea, and I think it could be used for much more than just the police thing.
Agreed.
But I think some of those boxes have got to be checked so that we don't have a commotion about it sitting in front of the Park and Rec in the middle of midnight flashing or something.
Okay.
Right.
To that point, we already have flashing speed indicators.
Yeah.
Those have been in existence for some time. Have those gone before planning and zoning as well?
No,
And is
there's
there a
a-
distinction? I don't think there's a distinction between those and this.
And I hope you're right, and
Yeah.
but I don't, those things get moved around town quite a bit, where
Right.
something like this might be a more downtown fixture, plus it might be in areas.
Do you see
I
this as a
agree, I hope you're
fixture?
right.
Not at all. I see it as there's a temporary road closure for a day or two. We got to throw it up. There's police training. We throw it up. There's a detour that's happened because of some sort of a hazard or flooding, and we put it up temporarily until the floodwater recedes.
Yeah.
It's the same type of thing that DOT would bring out to us, would be readily available under short order.
Right. I think we can certainly run it by planning and zoning. I don't suspect it's going to be an issue. I don't think they have jurisdiction over temporary signs. Some of the sawhorses we put out there that say yield, they don't have any control over those either.
Yeah, I just don't want to get in a situation where we put something up and wait for a complaint and then start dealing with it,
It's an appropriate thing to check.
To check with them, you're right. All right.
So, we're voting because you didn't use the state contract, is that why
Yep.
you're here before
No,
us
he's
today?
actually expending the money.
Okay,
Yeah, it's-
all right.
Both.
Correct.
All right.
I'd make a motion to approve this proposal as submitted from Lieutenant Bernier.
Good. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second.
And the furthest conversations, we'll run it by planning and zoning.
Sure.
That won't impact this decision to purchase.
Okay.
That may impact
Placement.
and
Length.
compliance with
Yeah.
whatever requirements they have.
Sure.
Is that fair? Good. Call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstained, yields hearing none, motion carries.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
both.
officer.
Tracy, can we kill the overhead? Thank you so much. That thing is
You don't
just,
like her outlined in blue?
I'm gonna have a suntan on this side. Thank you.
Item 6, Board of Education Director of Operations, Cliff Gurnham. Cliff's got 2 items, the first of which is to discuss and take possible action on change order number 7 for the Baldwin HVAC project. Cliff,
Good morning. Thanks
Good
for
morning.
having me.
our
So
pleasure.
we are speculating, but we have high hopes that this is the last change order for the project. We are kind of buttoning it up at this time. So this change order did go through the Standing Building Committee. And just to give you an idea what it is, so we have a large amount of piping up in the penthouse that feeds the various units that we just installed. So after evaluating, and looking at the piping, the age of the piping, some of the valves, things of that nature, and the location of the piping, it was in our best interest to relocate the piping and replace it. We can replace it with copper. They can get it in pretty quick. The valves are old. Some of the valves didn't work, so there was numerous issues that came into play. We tried to be very I want to say cautious, but aware of, the expenditures when we designed the project, and we thought we could reuse this. But after further looking at, again, all the things I just said, it was determined it was better to be replaced. So we had them put together a proposal. Save More, who's the existing contractor, will do all the work and everything else. So the the Standing Building Committee made the recommendation to approve this and move forward with the work in the amount of $53,612.79.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
A second? Any comments or questions?
Yeah, you make mention of the fact that the new piping is going to be wrapped with fiberglass insulation. I presume what's coming out is not asbestos. There's no asbestos at issue here?
Correct. It is not an issue. There's no asbestos. All that has been removed once upon a time.
Previously.
Yeah. Yep.
The only comment I'm gonna make is the same one I made when we had a similar situation at Adams, that while I can appreciate the initial planning stage, trying to contain the cost and everything, coming back with change orders is not my favorite.
Correct. Nor the Standing Building Committee, obviously. We do try to mitigate those as much as possible.
I mean,
So
what it's
it's a
going to
trade-off.
force me to do, if we ever get to the budget cycle or the bid cycle again, is simply ask this question: are there pipes or peripheral things that we're leaving off the initial estimate to keep the costs contained, that we know we're going to come back and say it probably makes sense?
We did, because we have started with the design of Phase 2, request that all the piping in Phase 2, or that mechanical room, is going to be replaced under the base because
Or
of
at
what we
least
planned.
leave it out there saying, this could potentially be part of the project. Okay, you know what I'm saying.
Does this fall within the contingency window of this project?
Yes.
That's, and then if you would for a moment, can we clarify the term penthouse? I'm not sure that we necessarily want the viewing public to think there's a penthouse somewhere, as most people understand the definition of penthouse. So what is the penthouse
So
at
we have
Adam?
2 mechanical rooms on the roof that are our penthouse. That's the only thing that is in there, is all the air handlers, pumps, motors, exhaust fans. And there's 2 of them that, like I said, are located on the roof. The Phase 2 project, which is a little more complex, and that's why we did Phase 1 first. Phase 2, the mechanical space is actually located under the roof space, but above the locker rooms. So on that one, we're landlocked, so to replace that equipment is gonna be a little more challenging. So we have a lot of design and engineering to do on that phase, so.
Okay, good. All right, there is a motion and a second. Call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, recusals, hearing none, motion carries. 6.2, perfect lead-in, segue. Consider and take possible action to award the engineering for Phase 2 of the Baldwin HVAC project. Cliff?
So we did go out to our 3 on-call vendors for the engineering. We got proposals from all 3. The proposals were reviewed by the Standing Building Committee. And after thorough venting, they felt that Silver Petroselli and Associates should be awarded the work in the amount of $47,685.
Cliff, can I ask, who designed the Phase 1?
Silver Petroselli and Associates. Yep.
No
So it's,
criticism of the way they designed it?
No.
Based on the fact you needed 7 change orders?
which, when you add up the amount, it's a very low percentage of the cost of the project. So, and I believe, again, we kind of initiated number 7 to replace the piping. And then I believe 1 or 2 of the other change orders were initiated through us. So an example of that was when we renovated Baldwin over the summer, we created a new classroom. So therefore, the HVAC system for that created a change order within the project. So we initiated that change order, so things like that. So it's a very small number of change orders that were unforeseen change orders. They were more created by us by doing work or something of that nature, or requesting work. So, yeah.
Can you remind us phase 2 versus phase 1, just physically, what is each?
So you almost can take Baldwin and cut it down the middle, separating the classrooms and the common space. That whole, as you're looking at the building, left section was done over this summer. The second half of the building, which is the main office, the locker rooms, the gym, and the band room, so that whole right section is going to be phase 2. And we were able to do that split because of the way the mechanical equipment was located in 2 ends of the building. So
Thank you.
phase 2 is the right
The
section,
right side.
or the stuff above the locker rooms.
Thank you.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second. Any further question? Call the question, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, recusals. Hearing none, motion carries. Cliff, thank you for your time. Item 7, Fire Chief Charles Hershaft, who is asking us to consider and take possible action on the purchase of stretcher and related equipment from SaveLives.com. Chief?
Yes, this will be the 4th time we've purchased this type of stretcher from this individual or company. If they're on state contract, they're the only vendor for the stretcher. So it's $16,784.63. I didn't bring my glasses.
You did pretty well for not having your glasses on. Is there a motion?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Comments or questions? Hearing none, call the question, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, recusals?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Motion carries. Thank you, Charlie. There you go. Item 8, Director of Human Resources, Mitch Goldblatt, discuss and take possible action on the implementation of a smoke and vape-free workplace policy.
Good morning.
Good morning. Here's something we can do to support the day program, right?
That absolutely is. The personnel policy manual needs updating, and among that, we've gone through some of the policies and try to update those that are most prevalent right now. And this one has come to light that the current policy allows for people, this is what brought this to light, allows for, does not prohibit smoking or vaping within vehicles, in town vehicles. And so that's what brought us to revamp our current smoking policy and add to it vaping, because vaping should be considered, is considered by state the same as smoking. We want to make it clear, because we also had an incident at the community center where someone was vaping in the lavatory area, although, you know, they said, where's the policy? Well, why can't I vape in the building? So, you know, we've tried to put this together as a new policy that basically prohibits smoking and vaping on all town premises, including in town vehicles. It does allow, though, for smoking and vaping outside, 10 feet outside any town building entrance, and recognizing that there are people that do smoke and do vape, keeping them out only in the outdoor areas, away from the buildings, away from inside the buildings. And,
I thought
I thought we already
people
had-
were going towards not on town property, period.
I thought we had that already.
No, we do not have that, and I think it's problematic for certain areas of the town.
I think it's problematic having people standing around the entrances and exits.
I'm not disagreeing with that, but I think it's problematic with current employees who do smoke, do vape, and have for many, many years outside the buildings. And we want to make sure it's outside the buildings. We want to make sure it's outside 10 feet, because right now there's no limit outside the building.
What would be the problem by just making it not on town property, period?
Yeah,
Is
I
there
agree.
some ADA thing or something I don't
No,
know about?
no,
I mean,
there's
I
not.
thought that was the direction most communities were going. I mean, that's why you see them out in the driveways.
Right. I think that the issue just is the fact that we have a number of employees that do smoke. And when they are outside, they feel that if they're not within anybody else's area, that they're allowed to smoke.
So then, does that mean that the public then can stand within 10 feet of town hall and smoke or vape and drop cigarette butts all over the place, which is exactly what happens?
They can do that today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought they can so
do
we
that.
do not have an ordinance about smoking on town property. I'm amazed. I thought we did.
We do not.
And this is
But
not
my
an ordinance.
question was, why?
It's not an ordinance.
What is
this
the
is
downside
an
of,
employee.
of not having that policy? I mean, why do we not have it? I mean, I'm sorry that there's some people, maybe, in some respects, we're doing them a favor.
Well, the downside is twofold. One is I think it's quite frankly unenforceable. And second of all, I think.
Certainly unenforceable if it's not on the books.
Well, I think it's, and the second problem is I think we're gonna run into issues with some current employees who may not be able to continue working for the town of Guilford.
So can I pick this up a little bit
Yeah.
along Charlie's?
And believe me, you're
Charlie's
speaking
line
to
of
somebody who's
thinking.
very anti-smoking, but I just
No,
wanna
it's not a personal
say that
anti-smoking
We've
thing.
had
It
this
just,
discussion with
It
others.
just seems like we're inching towards,
But I said a similar thought question. I mean, the first question is, there's no contracts that are implicated by this, right? We're allowed to unilaterally change the policy.
Yeah.
And that's what you're doing, right? Which is part of
Well,
Charlie's
the town,
or proposing.
proposed policies would be in the purview of the Board of Selectmen,
Right.
that's correct.
Okay, so this is sort of an umbrella over any contractual matter, and we're allowed to have policies in
Yes.
addition to what is obligated, each party's obligated to do in the contracts, okay? What did you do to reach the proposal you came up with? In other words, did you survey employees, did you survey department heads, like how did you get to this specific proposal?
Well, a couple things. First of all, this came from, the idea came from a couple of different employees who had issues about smoking in vehicles especially.
They wanted to smoke?
No, they wanted to.
Other people to stop.
They wanted other people to stop. They wanted not to be able, they wanted to be able to be in a smoke-free vehicle.
Fair
Because there are
enough.
people that don't smoke, and and a lot of times they ride in pairs in certain vehicles, and whether they ride in pairs, one person is smoking, the other one isn't, it's been very disconcerting to the non-smoker. Also, if we allow smoking in vehicles, as I'm sure all you realize, that if you get into a vehicle that someone has smoked in,
but isn't that the same thing, having to walk through a cloud of smoke to get in or out of a building?
Well, once again, the proposal's been the 10 feet, and to answer Lou's question fairly, we've also taken this to the Employee Safety Committee. The Employee Safety Committee had a lot of discussion about this, voted in favor of it. It was somewhat unanimous. There were 2 people that abstained, thinking it should be stronger than what it is.
It's similar to what Charlie's saying.
Similar to what Charlie's saying.
Okay.
But yet felt that we should be taking this action, and we also spoke to representatives of both police and fire who have their own policies that are very strict, so we didn't have an issue there.
Are they allowed to smoke on the campus of the police and fire?
That I'm not aware of. We spoke about the vehicles especially.
But
Are they allowed to
Don't
smoke?
know.
So,
I'm seeing a no.
I know,
Not
saw
cars,
it,
but
but
on the-
both our eyeballs went there.
I didn't realize Tim was
How
still.
about trucks?
No, not in the truck, not in the trucks or in the
Fire
cars. I don't know if they're allowed to smoke on the premises outside the building. I'm not
But
aware.
I mean, we're worried about employees who wanna smoke, and we're worried about their rights, but I'm old enough to remember
I don't think it's
people
in the rights
smoking in the workplace, in the break room, or
Airplanes
sometimes
are
in
allowed,
offices,
right.
and then over the years, I had to do it. I had to step back with those employees and say, you can only smoke in one place in the library, and then at some point, I finally said, nobody can smoke in the building.
And maybe that's
you know,
where we
that's
are,
what
this
happens.
is a baby step getting to where we should be.
Well, this is really just adding vape.
Right.
No,
it's
it's not. No, it's not. It's
I
taking
saw the
smoking out of the
vehicles.
Out of
vehicles.
vehicles.
But the
Because
10
the buildings have been
The
smoke-free
buildings,
for.
buildings are smoke-free.
And the 10-foot rule is currently in place, that's not
There's
changed.
there's no specific area that says you can smoke outside the building. So you
Okay.
could smoke basically 1 foot outside the building, as long as you're not inside the building.
Okay,
Oh, so
the
10 foot is a-
10 foot is, yeah, it's
A
just
new
putting it-
restriction.
Okay.
And so, to fully
This is
answer.
only for employees.
Yes.
Correct.
This is not for the public. This is only for employees.
Well, what
We're,
about?
we're addressing a personnel policy, not
Correct.
a universal ordinance. This is an employee policy.
Okay.
We can certainly agree to have a discussion about doing something
Well,
larger
For
than that.
We're-
But
we're
free
also-
properties.
we're also
Right,
paying-
That's a separate, all right.
We're
that makes-
we're also self-employed for health insurance purposes, so we're paying the healthcare costs of the employees, not of the general public. And to me, that makes a difference in terms of someone's right to smoke, so.
I hate using the word right. I don't know if it's
What
right.
about-
The,
Thank
the,
you.
rea-
Thank
the
you.
reality of the situation is we have people that, and I can't speak for the fire department, we have people who work at the fire department 24 hours a day. They are there at the department. We have people that are dispatchers that are held downstairs, 8 hours, held over many hours a day. We have people that work on our fields and our, and other outdoor activities where, you know, in our public works, where they are out many hours a day and night sometimes, and they happen to have an addiction to smoking, or, and they.
So
and they
if
do-
somebody's on a crew,
Right.
working on a ball field,
Right.
and one wants to smoke, and the person working next to him doesn't want to smoke,
Right, but when you're out working in a ball field, you're not in a confined area either. So you're not necessarily working, you know, side by side, shoulder to shoulder.
I
You
hope
would
courtesy
be- yeah.
prevails.
Yeah, I think
Blow
there,
smoke
I think
out
it's
of it.
courtesy, but it's also the fact that
Right.
people are outside.
So I have sort of two thoughts on
Sure.
this, Mitch. This, along the lines of what Matt's saying, which is, it's a step in the right direction. Okay, I think it, the vehicle. You
And
can
it's an
tell when you're
employee
driving, you can
policy.
tell when you're driving behind somebody who's smoking. It's incredible.
It is.
Right? So we've all gotten sort of hypersensitized to it. And as Sandy was saying, over the decades, we've all kind of slowly, you know, those of us who don't smoke, it's been easier, obviously, but even smokers have slowly gotten used to not this location, no more restaurants. I can remember when they said bars.
That's right.
It was gonna be the apocalypse. Well, business actually went up, right? It was better for everybody in the long run. So, I mean, I recognize that you were imposing a further restriction on folks who are doing something that they would like to do. I tend to think it's a good idea to not have a complete prohibition, as you proposed here, to sort of give people some ability to deal with this situation. It's, you know, that, you know, you've got management questions here too. So I kind of like the first step. If we get to a point where we do an ordinance that's nothing on any town property, fine, we'll take it up, I would consider it. This is a helpful step, I think, and I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I think Matt makes, you know, the point that this, what we're talking about today is an employee policy change, and that makes sense, you know, doing a baby step
Well,
at
what
this point,
about
but.
bullet number 4 under B? All visitors, customers and vendors to town premises. All visitors. Is that everybody who comes into the library or the town hall or the
Yeah.
park and rec?
You can't
So that's
fire up
not,
in the
so
steps.
then that's not, they're not employees.
People know they can smoke in a building. I think there's just,
But this is the 10-foot rule now for everybody, not just employees. That's what
Yeah.
I'm asking. I think that bullet has to go out. If we're just talking about employees now, because then it's everybody. And then you gotta look, you know, then
Well, wait a
the
minute,
enforcement
yeah,
of
well,
that
no,
is
our
unbelievable.
buildings.
Why would you
So-
not, why would you not want your visitors to follow the same rules?
Well, then, but then we gotta be clear that we're not just talking about employees in this policy. We're talking about everybody who steps foot on town property, right?
But a lot of our policies do talk about people who are in the building. We talk, even our sexual harassment policies talk about contractors.
Yeah.
And
But this is
visitors.
beyond the building.
So I'm
This
just
is,
saying,
okay,
no,
I
I'm
just wanna be clear.
No,
that's
it's
all.
fine. If you wanna take it out, take it out. I'm just saying
Well, I
it's not.
don't necessarily wanna take it out. It is beyond employees.
I would
guess.
keep it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't wanna take anything out.
Table it?
No.
No.
Well,
What about refining no closer to 10 feet as to only applying to town employees at this point?
I wasn't involved in the review of it, I know Pete was.
And
Right.
Chris Hodgson.
And
Maybe that's
you
what
know,
we
I
gotta do,
kind of
cycle
almost
it back
think
through.
Maybe you might wanna consider tabling it and
Yeah.
I'll circle back
Hey.
to,
Mitch, is it correct to assume that all visitors was in there from the original policy?
No, it's the all visitors comes in from a template that was used to start this with, and then we went through with a number of changes, working with our both town councils of Pete Barrett and Chris Hodgson.
Right.
Looking at this. So.
Okay, but in the previous version of our policy.
Our current policy talks about smoking areas in buildings. That's how old it is. So I mean, we're going a long way here. So.
Well, if we do end up passing something that does permit smoking and vaping within 10 feet of the entrance, I would say take out the very first sentence of the policy, which states that it's the policy of the town to prohibit smoking and vaping on all town premises. We start out by saying all town premises, and then
So they
halfway
feel
down the
10 feet,
page,
it's
we're
10
saying 11 feet
feet
from the
over.
door is fine,
Right.
so.
Oh, my vote is leave the first one and take the second
Oh,
one
I
out.
would agree with that.
I think we're not against this policy. I think we're looking, just based on the information prior to this, this is too weak in my mind.
Yes.
I think it needs to be stronger.
Or at least let's recycle it back through legalese.
I've got some concerns. Prohibiting smoking on any town properties for the public. I think is gonna require an ordinance. I don't know, Counselor, you,
Yeah,
That makes sense.
We can look back at it and just look at, and just make it, I can take it back, work with Pam, work with Pete and Chris, and just come back and make it just for employees and just take out the, so it doesn't become an ordinance situation.
Well, why not look
Unless you
into
want to
what-
become an ordinance and override the whole personnel policy manual. This was an attempt to, basically amend our personnel policies based on concerns we've got ongoing. It started with, as everything else, it started with just this concern about smoking in vehicles.
Vaping.
But you just, and the vaping, well, it's the both. And so in doing so, it made sense to have an overriding smoking, vaping policy for town.
It
So
looks
it's
like
all
there's
one
enough
place.
questions for this to at least be tabled and go back through legal.
Yeah.
And I don't think expanding it necessarily at this point to Matt's point, but I do think that we ought to get this done to address the issues that have come up. I mean, that's what started this.
Yeah.
Let's get those issues tied down, and then, take a harder look at going forward with, and whether it has to be an
Yeah, I
ordinance.
think-
I'd agree.
Yeah.
Let's narrow the consideration.
Let's fix these problems
Because
that we're
today-
trying to fix,
today-
yeah.
Today, I can go to the designated smoking area in this building and have a cigarette, right?
Today, yes.
Okay, so I can
Well,
still
no,
smoke
you
in.
just have state law that overrides that, as far
There
as
is?
smoking in the building. All
Okay.
municipal buildings are
All right.
smoke-free by state law. And vaping
Oh,
is,
okay.
vaping is considered smoking by the state. So anything.
So that
anything-
person in the
So,
lab or
oh,
elevator, whatever it was.
I'm just saying, it was brought, the vaping issue came up, we researched it, at that time and came back to the director of Park and Recreation and let that person know, under no consideration could vaping be allowed in the building, period, because vaping is considered a
Oh,
smoking.
okay.
Okay, what this was doing was trying to take our antiquated policy, put it together as a
Get it
new
up to
policy
speed.
for our employees that basically made it very clear
Okay.
that smoking, make it very clear for everyone, vaping is considered a smoking product, number one. And number two, extending the current policy to say, not only can you not smoke inside the building, you can't smoke within 10 feet of the building, you also cannot smoke within any town vehicle.
So what would be helpful would be to see the current legal, the current statutory and regulatory structure that we're dealing with. In other words, what everybody's bound by.
Or at least have it
And then what
reviewed
what we're
by.
proposing to do by.
Yeah, I don't wanna do the reviewing here and do all that, but
No, but
I
I'd
do
like
think
to-
it should have been cycled back.
It's
through.
interesting that at the very end it comes out, well, there's already a statute that says you can't
Yeah.
smoke in a
So
public building.
we're not fixing the
Right.
problem.
But we're making it clear to, we're
Yeah,
making it
the
clear to
vehicles.
employees
We're not
that
fixing it,
vaping
we're
is considered
aligning our
smoking, and
policy.
we're making it clear to employees that vehicles are considered and not, you cannot smoke in a vehicle. That is not clear anywhere in any.
Is that covered by state policy?
No. No, it's
Oh.
not.
That's why we're.
Well, I think
not
that's
proposing.
real. I think that's a real. Nobody should be subjected to having to be in a.
I agree, that's why we're here.
I still think though,
All right.
it's gotta get legal review.
Yeah, so all visitors and all contractors and consultants is redundant to the policy as it relates to building, and it's redundant to
That's what I
the
meant.
statute.
Yes.
So we don't even need that in there. It sounds as if, well, I understand what you're trying to do is clean the whole thing up.
Another round.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is there a motion to table?
Take that,
So
Mark.
moved.
Second. Call a question, all in favor?
Aye.
Thanks, Mitch.
Yeah,
Opposed,
I'll be back.
abstaining, recused.
He's going out for a break.
He's gotta be 10 feet away from the building.
And I'll be with him now.
Yeah. There was a time.
Yeah.
Item 9, consider to take possible action on noise control ordinance variance application from the Guilford Police Department for its shoreline loony duck event taking place December 14th, 2019 at Jacobs Beach. Lou, you wanna make that motion?
Yeah, but first I just gotta understand, is it duck or duke?
Yeah.
Okay.
What is that?
Looney Duke.
What's
I know, they made us run into the sound, that's all I know.
It's the
Yeah.
old Pilgrim Plunge,
So
Penguin
it's
Plunge.
Penguin
It's a penguin
plunge.
event. It benefits Special Olympics. We picked the name because there was initially there was penguin plunge is copyrighted. We can't use that. So this was an event that takes place over in Scotland. It's the same thing. It's just we figured it would get some people's attention, wondering what it was, to look at it a little closer and hopefully come out and support.
It worked.
It worked.
So 100% of all proceeds benefit Special Olympics. We're the only plunge event on the shoreline now. There's one in New London, but we're the only other one on the shoreline. So we started it last year. A couple of you guys came out and
We
joined us.
did.
Hope to see you
We
again.
did. We'll be back.
And
Enjoy is a relative term.
We did, the one benefit, we did plan it a little better this year as far as achieving high tide. So that's why the time is the time and the day is the day, as opposed to last year, as you know, we had to run out a couple hundred yards to
Yes.
get deep enough in the water. So hopefully we troubleshot that aspect of it.
Thank you for that.
But otherwise, the only noise we'll be creating is we'll have some, like last year, some amplified music and a PA for just while the
Yeah.
event's going on.
Absolutely.
All right, we'll make the motion to approve
And I'll
that
second it.
exemption.
I'll second
The noise
it.
ordinance?
And I'll second it with a challenge to everyone to participate.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah. Well, we need cheerleaders and supporters out there as well.
I was a
It
cheerleader.
doesn't all have to be, you were. All right,
Anyway,
anything
support
further?
it.
No.
Call the question, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, recusals, hearing none, motion carries.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Lieutenant.
I'll put it in my book.
Tracy will send out a meeting notice.
I'm sure she will.
Item 10, discuss and take possible action to set a public hearing date of November 4th, 2019, at 8:30 a.m. at the Guilford Town Hall to receive public comment and consider adoption of an amendment to the Guilford Harbor Management Plan. Is there a motion?
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
This is so that we will be consistent or comply with state laws. It's rather perfunctory, but it needs to be done nonetheless. And we have the amendment already in hand. Pam?
There was actually two things. The Harbor Management Commission came up with an amendment that they wanted, and then technically, for whatever reasons,
Yeah.
and I don't know if that's in their packet or not, that one paragraph change.
It is.
And
Yep.
then, in order to adopt that change, we technically have to change our amendment to reflect that amendment. And also, there's been a change on, Department of Transportation used to get involved with decisions on the plan. That is, state laws changed that, taking it away from Department of Transportation, and it lies with DEEP.
Our friends at Deep, again. Right, so we will be in compliance. All right.
Motion on the table?
There is a motion on the table. Seconded. Call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, recusals, hearing none, motion carries.
So how do we publicize that, the hearing, the public hearing?
It goes in the Courier, this one's going in the Courier, and then it's put on the website.
So I'm thinking about the public hearing that we held to discuss the building
The last
fees.
two,
where
or the one
last-
before that.
Yeah, where there was no attendance by the public, and then questions came up afterwards as soon as the article hit the paper.
Paper, right.
Right. And frankly,
What
this
can
is-
we do about that?
Well, so, it's sort of glib to say social media is the answer, but, you know, at the facilities meeting, I literally got up and was thinking, of course, I was at the meeting, and, you know, we're out the door, but all these, we do exactly what we have to do, and
Right.
it's not a criticism by any means,
No.
but, I mean, I think people are paying more attention to, you know, Instagram and Facebook and these things, and they just might see it a little bit more. I mean, I was.
It's on Facebook as well.
Oh, it's on Facebook?
Yeah, it goes on the
There you go,
website.
there's a lot of that,
Yeah.
so,
It automatically gets posted.
Oh,
on
well, that's good.
the
Okay.
Website to Facebook, everything.
Do you tweet, Matt?
No.
No?
This is,
So,
there's a lot.
this issue has come up before. This issue has come up before in using the emergency
Oh, yeah.
access thing for announcements versus strictly emergencies. And I personally am for using that contact media, you know, for official announcements. I don't see the problem with using, you know, that emergency access thing to announce, you know, public hearings or whatever. I know the discussion has come up before, and there's a, you know, there's certain sentiment against using it, that it will dilute the impact.
The
And,
impact.
but I disagree. You know, we have a pretty good list there, and it sends a message. There is a public hearing, and, you know, whether it be an education issue, a townwide issue, a harbor issue, that's my
Your 2 cents. But are there any restrictions around using that emergency management, that reverse 911? Is this the reverse 911?
yeah.
There are some.
Two separate ones, there's the reverse 911 and there's our mass notifications system,
Right.
so they're two separate ones.
and that goes to whoever has opted in,
Opted in.
right?
Right.
Provided
And
contact
we have
information.
used it for other things in the past, like
Yeah.
notices like that, and we do get a lot of we had gotten a lot of negative feedback.
Yeah, people don't
You
like
know,
it.
What would
so
be an
it goes
example
both
of
ways.
negative feedback?
People wanting off the list if they were getting too many, if they got messages like that,
Or were
so.
there messages that
So
came
there's always
at
gonna be a little of
strange
that, so
hours?
Yeah, you're gonna-
Yeah.
All this stuff is, you know, how to reach people. There's two parts of the process.
Well, maybe
One,
it's a
are we-
sign we approved a little.
I know, I
while
was thinking of that, but are we getting information out and is it then being
Yeah.
received and processed in some way? I mean, somehow I must
Or
have signed
maybe
up.
people just don't care.
I think they're overwhelmed, and it's a function of getting the information past your eyeballs and
I
into your
think one
brain
of the
and
ways
then
that
onto
we've
your
addressed
phone.
it is, this one is just cleaning up languages, right? This particular thing is just cleaning up language, so,
The harbor management?
yeah.
Actually, no, I think the commission came up with a
change.
paragraph that they wanted,
Right.
substantive change, which I believe is in your packet.
Okay,
It's
because
in
I was
the
just
list.
thinking that the one, that, and maybe this is one too, that we decided that we'd hold certain public meetings at night because we felt there was, the subject was important enough to enough people that we should hold them at a time
Give the
that people could
opportunity.
come to, whereas holding them in
Yes.
the morning, this actually says 7:30, but I don't think you mean 7:30, I hope not, God,
Should be
please. But anyway, I don't know, I sometimes am of two minds in this. I mean, I think we've reached out, we're doing the traditional ways that we always did with the newspaper and everything, putting it, it's now on the website, it's now on Facebook. I mean,
Yeah.
we are reaching out and we are giving great thought as to when we do it, whether it's an AM or a PM deal. I don't know, I'm afraid that, there's quite a few of these and I'm afraid people you'd use that notification system and then that would become like somebody just said, kind of a blank.
It's a
Cry
too.
wolf, I think so. I would be concerned with that.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm on a list that Madison sends out. It's an email.
I
and
get
it's,
emails.
You know, and it's just real simple. You can see exactly what it is and hit delete if it's not relevant. And
It's on
I
the
think that
subject
would
line.
be, yep.
At the sake of sounding rather flip, I think we may be over exaggerating the interest in what we do on good part of the community. At the sake of being flip. And the second is, this is a participatory democracy that we belong to. It requires some level
Some
of
responsibility.
civic
Agreed.
responsibility
Individual, yeah.
to
Agreed. You're right.
participate. Which means if, how many different venues can we make this available to them? That doesn't necessarily mean that there isn't one that we should start to use, all right? And if it is, we want to put together an opt-in email. We could certainly put a campaign together to build an email list to send out to folks who specifically want to do that. Again, I'm not sure that that's going to change the relative participation level at some of these events, some of these things that, and then there may be a portion of the folks who say, this is pretty rudimentary stuff that our town government ought to be doing on a regular basis and doesn't rise
Well,
to the level of.
How about this, to Susan's point, and you belong to COG and that type of thing, how about you checking with the other towns and what do they do? I mean, Susan's got a valid point, that, she's receiving information from Madison. Why don't you ask a few of the other communities, surrounding
That's good.
communities, and see, if all of them have this email list, maybe it's something we can look at. But let's start with that.
You got it. That makes sense.
I like that. If we do anything, I think the email list makes more sense than using the mass notification system.
I do too.
I do too.
Yeah, this is- And then, like you said, opt-in.
It's an opt-in piece, that's right.
Good.
All right.
Useful.
Well, again,
Another
at the
chore.
at the sake of being flip, how do we get the word out to people to opt into an email list?
Here's the emergency.
We have to have a public hearing.
Oh, boy. I'm sorry to be so flip. It's not-
I mean, you literally start by having a clipboard when people come to any public hearing.
Right.
It's like, hey, sign in, give us your
Right.
email if you want future notices.
Notices, yeah.
Start with people who care. A lot.
Okay. All right. Item 11, consider and take possible action on a pedestrian access easement agreement between the town of Guilford and the Whitfield and Water Shops LLC to refer to Planning and Zoning Commission for a mandatory referral and set up a town meeting date of October 21st, 2019 at 8:15 a.m. at Town Hall. is a way of backdrop. This is related to the parking arrangement we've made with St. George to allocate, I believe it's 70 or 75 parking spaces behind St. George's, which will be designated for employees of the various merchants downtown to relieve the congestion, the parking congestion, so that folks are more easily able to park and shop downtown. It was determined that among the shopkeepers, there are over 200 employees that work within the greater downtown area, and being able to move those employees out of potentially customer parking would be vital. To this point, we have satisfied and signed an agreement with St. George Church. They've done that through the diocese. One of the conditions was that we would provide a sidewalk between the property owners, the Whitfield, Whitfield and Water shops, alongside the hair of the dog grooming, and which would dump pedestrians or walkers into the driveway to the left of St. George as you look at it. That required us getting an easement from the property owner. Janice, it's all yours.
Yeah. Well, Brian McClone has been working with this in terms of the effort, along with Matt and EDC to, come up with a plan to help alleviate some of the parking problem. And this is just to really implement the physical changes that need to occur with the infrastructure of the sidewalk. And there's been some back and forth with the property owner and St. George's Church as to the agreements and the contents of the easement, and everyone's in agreement at this point, so it's time to move it forward for the town to approve, and then it will go to Planning and Zoning as an 824 referral from you folks, and also a site plan approval has to be acquired from Planning and Zoning as well. Mhm.
Right.
I'll move it.
Second. Any further questions?
All that's before us here is this easement for the pedestrian walkway.
You're setting a town meeting.
And you're setting a town
And setting a
meeting.
town
To
meeting for that purpose.
Right.
That's what's being under
And
consideration.
yes, the 824 referral as well.
And will the parking only be for employees and,
Yes.
Yes.
so that it's not gonna be like general public?
No,
parking?
they're setting up a program where there's gonna be actual placards supplied to merchants to give to their employees, so that only those folks should be parking in those specific areas.
Which would address, I imagine, some of the concerns that the church had.
Correct,
Yeah.
right.
Okay, great, this is great.
As you can imagine, we've been through all the liability issues on both sides of the,
And just practical.
on the part of all three parties
Yeah.
to this.
This is a great idea, though.
Yes, it is. Good. All right. There's a motion and a second. Call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstained, refusals, hearing none, motion carries.
Great,
Thank you,
thanks.
Janice. Item 12, set a town meeting date of October 21st, 2019 at 8:15 a.m. At the town hall to consider an act on the conservation easement for 135 Old Quarry Road. This is a change of date, as we had previously set the date for October 7th. Kevin, just refresher, please.
Okay, I think your last meeting I met with you and showed you the plans for the
Right.
conservation easement and the map showing where the conservation easement is going to be. At that meeting, the commission approved actually this morning as the meeting date. Unfortunately, I missed doing the actual date of the meeting to correct it. Planning and zoning doesn't meet until next Wednesday on this to approve the subdivision piece, which creates the conservation easement. So we need to change the public meeting date to the 21st of October.
Good. Is there a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Any further questions? Call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, recusals, hearing none. Motion carries. Kevin, thank you.
Thanks.
Item 13, consider and take possible action on the proclamation honoring the 100th anniversary of the Darrow Rebazzini American Legion Post 48. As you folks probably recall, we approved the placement of an additional plaque on the green just in front of the World War I monument. And for those who haven't had an opportunity to take a look at it, it is already there. And they did a nice job. It's very fitting and appropriate for the location. And this is a proclamation, so is there a motion to approve this proclamation?
So moved.
Second.
Call the question, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, recusals, hearing none, motion carries. We'll all be required to sign that at some point, perhaps the end of the meeting. Which is a reminder, we'll probably, I believe there's an event on, is it Veterans Day? That they're going to.
There's a date in the proclamation that says the 8th day of November,
Yeah,
29.
yeah, I believe it is the celebration on Veterans Day. So we'll get further information out, since they're gonna be doing something special that day.
Which is a nice event anyway.
We
Yes.
typically have a ceremony on Veterans Day in front of the World War I monument anyway. We'll get information out to you folks on that, all right? Item 14, appointments and resignations, 14.1. There's a resignation received from Scott Gillenstein from the Pension Committee. Is there a motion to accept with appreciation and regret?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Call the question, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, recusals, hearing none, motion carries. Charlie, unfortunately, we're gonna have to go through the request for the use of town property today on an individual basis. 15.1, act on a request from the Guilford Arts Center to place a sign on the green.
So moved.
In a second?
Second.
Call the question, all in
Aye.
favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, recusals, hearing none, motion carries. 15.2, act on a request from the Cove Center for grieving children to place a sign on the green.
So moved.
In a
Second.
Call the question, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstained, recusals, hearing none, motion carries. 15.3, act on a request from the Shoreline Arts Alliance to use the green July 29th, August 2nd, 2020 for its Shakespeare on the Shoreline, and for 2 weeks to be turned between July 6th and 24th, 2020 for its Rising Stars Summer Theater Experience. Is there a motion?
Make the motion.
And a second.
Second.
Call the question, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstained, recusals, hearing none, motion
So
carries.
that doesn't, I mean, this isn't just a sign, this is the use of the green.
This is the use of the green,
That doesn't
yeah.
have to go through green committee and
For
all
the
that.
two events.
Yeah. Yeah. These are events they've held pretty much
Yeah,
every year,
yeah.
right? 15.3A, maybe? Act on a request of Guilford Arts Center for the annual special permissions during the use of their green for the Craft Expo 2020, as well as a request to waive section 214-2A of the town code to allow the serving of beer and wine during the event as part of the food court. I would amend that to suggest that it is consistent with what we approved this past year.
Meaning restricted area.
Restricted area, under the same conditions of last
All
year.
the conditions that we went through before.
Wrist-
No feedback.
Wristbands.
Yeah, I'm
No
wondering,
negative
this
feed-
is the third year, and last year we wanted them to check again with the police to make sure that the first year hadn't had problems. I think it's fine, I would like to approve it, but I also wonder,
You want to
it's
table it?
so far out,
Yeah.
that,
Yes.
Well, let's get the feedback, make sure that
Yeah.
there wasn't any
Yeah.
issues
Yeah.
that we should be addressing.
Right.
That
And
makes
also,
sense.
would it be appropriate to talk to the Green Committee for something like this, that's such a major use of the green?
Does it continue to work? Yeah, I think to Sandy's point, it's worth
Yeah.
asking the question.
I think, it's getting, anyway, I just think we need to table it, but I think it's getting smoother every year, but I still think we just can't
Can't.
vote on it today.
Agreed. I agree.
Actually, to that point, Pam and I did have a meeting recently with the chairman of the Green Committee. It was related to the placement of signs and so forth, but we also had some discussions about these kind of things. They seem to
Worth it.
they seem to be okay with it. They are okay with it, actually. Contingent, consistent.
Well, let's have them
consistent with the
put
police
their
department as
official
well.
stamp on it, and the police
All right.
department.
All right, so is there a motion to table then?
So moved.
Second.
Call the question, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, recusals, hearing none, that motion carries. 15.4, act on a request of the Madison Art Society to waive section 214-2A of the town code allowing the serving of wine and its reception taking place at the Guilford Free Library on October 13th, 2019. Is there a motion? Is there a motion?
Yeah, I'll make the motion.
And a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion? We have someone front, we have, come on up. This is,
Madison Art
Is it-
Society.
yes.
Yes, I'm
Nick-
Hillary Griffin.
Yep.
I'm
Hillary.
representing the Madison Art Society. And I'm currently the secretary of the Art Society. Today we're having a vote for a changeover of board members, so if that goes well, I'll be the president for the Art Society. So in Scranton, we've never had to address this issue. Alcohol is allowed to be served at the library.
Private
Yeah.
institution, right?
Yeah, I
It's not a
think so.
municipal library.
It's not a municipal library.
Okay, so we've never, and I guess in the past, we have not petitioned the town or the Board of Selectmen or the library to allow us to perhaps serve wine only. So what's happening is we're trying to broaden our reach. When we have art shows and art receptions now, not only did all of you get an invitation, but everybody in Madison, all the elected officials in Madison have also received the invitation to join us at the art reception. Directors of galleries in town and up and down the shoreline, as well as interior decorators, just people in design, just to get more eyes on the art and make our events more of a community event. And in our polarized world, we know that art can bring people together, and it's just a way to maybe enhance the experience. Often art and food and wine go together. So I'm just here to ask if perhaps you would consider allowing that to happen. And we do have insurance that does have, we are covered for $1 million liability, and it does include coverage for alcohol.
Isn't there a formal application process? I mean, you can't just, I know you could say that you have it, but
You mean the insurance?
all of those, isn't there a formal application for this type of thing?
No, not for this. It's for use
Isn't
of the town
there,
green.
right now, I believe there's a town ordinance that was I think done when the community center was rebuilt, and there was discussion about events there,
Right.
outside events, and the selectmen at the time, I believe, said that there would be no serving of alcohol on town property.
Right.
Now, from time to time, that has been waived,
Right.
but basically, I believe that's what is in effect.
Right.
Is that, I want to be sure, because I was throwing around an ordinance about the
Yeah,
smoking, and
yeah.
there wasn't, so
Yeah, I can't speak to that. I can get back to you on that.
Yeah.
You know, we have the Parks and Public Places ordinance where it identifies the governing agency of certain town properties, and, so I know there's a no alcohol prohibition, but I'm not sure if it's all built into, not, I have to get back to you.
I did search last night as well. I looked through the charter and I looked for an ordinance. I couldn't find anything. Of course, it's there, I didn't know where it was.
Right.
So, just a request. Don't know if you'd consider it.
Comments?
You know, it's always my understanding that alcohol was not,
Right, now, I want to make some distinctions. We approved some alcohol at a program which was specific to brewing.
Yes, so I just wanted to clarify,
Right.
I'm not opposed to this in any way. I just wanted to clear, on that day specifically, there'll be 4 library staff members on duty, each of whom will be assigned to a public desk, and only one of whom is a professional staff member. There'll be 1 librarian and 3 library assistants.
Right.
And it's just by coincidence, the day before we have a massive event with many other staff members, so I'm not able to bring anybody else in, and we have no custodian on either. So that will be the entirety of the library staff will be those.
well,
4.
at the minimum, you know, I guess we don't have an application process, but I'd be concerned about who's serving the wine and how and all
Yes,
that
we will
kind
have
of
a bartender to monitor the pours, and of course, this is a sipping event. This is a generally not a very raucous crowd, as you can imagine. So, and I wonder, is there precedent? Has the library allowed this, or has the town, Board of Selectmen
Well, I can-
allowed this in the past at the library?
If you don't mind, I can speak in my past role. Is that all
Right,
right?
that's fine.
Sure. I was the library director for 40 years. 10 assistant, 30 director to be precise. There are a lot of town groups that use the library, in-town groups, and some out-of-town groups with regional affiliation. There are many groups, the poets, the playwrights, the individual artists that have receptions, over the years had hoped that they could serve wine at the library, and it's never been allowed, either by the library board, because the Guilford Library is kind of in between. It's a 501c3, but it's town property.
Right.
So either by, and occasionally when we had a fundraiser for the library renovation, which was after hours, we even asked for permission from the selectmen to do that, even though it was after hours and only people coming were people related to the fundraiser. But today, if
Was
it's-
was that granted?
Yes, but the library was closed, you know, and there was a person at the door letting in ticketed fundraisers for a 2-hour deal. The library's now open, there's no extra staffing. We put the art center, and I support it, through a whole business about tipping and wristbands and the marketplace, and, you know, and that was kind of the same argument. Oh, it's a genteel crowd and everything's fine, but it's also surrounded by the public, you know, and there'll be children in the library. I mean, I don't mean to exaggerate. I don't think this is going to turn into any kind of a drunken brawl, but it sets a precedent. Why then would not the Guilford Poets Guild come back and say, gee, you let the Madison Art Society have wine, and we've been asking you for 20 years, and we're a town group, you know?
Agreed.
It's just an example.
There's only been 2 examples where it was actually a library program. One that we just recently got approved for, and one 3 years ago. Other than that, it's always been after hours, the library's been closed as a fundraiser or some other event where the library's been closed. But we did have the 2 times when it was specifically a library program where there was multiple staff members involved.
Gotcha. Pam?
Yeah, just going back to, it's chapter 214, parking public places, town ordinance, where consume or have any alcoholic liquors as defined in Connecticut general statutes of any kind is prohibited, except when the governing agency in its discretion, after receiving approval from the Board of Selectmen, waives the provisions of this subsection by issuing a permit to that effect to any association, club, society, which applies in writing to the governing agency for said permit at least 30 days prior to the date for which the permit is sought. Permits are issued subject to the provisions of the Liquor Control Act under the Connecticut General Statutes.
I guess that's where I was coming from with the permit process and that type of thing. I mean,
Right, that is pretty well defined in terms of the process, right?
yeah, I would want, I would want a minimum of some application in writing of, who the insurance carrier is, what the coverage is, and all of the,
My
if we
question
were
is-
to even consider this precedent, so.
Yeah, I mean, it's a week, is it really a week away? You're talking about the 13th?
It's the 13th.
Okay, I mean, it's, my sense is this is happening either way. I mean, the Madison Library's under
Yes.
construction, that space is available, and it's, I mean, and you can still have food and some desserts. I mean, I'm not sure how essential that is
It's
to the
not essential, it
process.
just enhances the experience.
Yeah, that's right.
It will certainly serve seltzer water and sparkling cider.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
the season for sparkling cider. We can handle it if you're not going to
Okay.
allow this. It's just it would have been
Would've
nice.
been.
Understood.
And you would have all enjoyed maybe a glass of Chardonnay if you attend.
Which we will potentially do it with a local
And thank
establishment.
you for the invite
I
to the
will be
event.
along.
I did.
I mean, we've got,
I'm
yeah,
intending to.
coming,
And again, I think consistent. We didn't meet the 30-day requirement in terms of the application ahead of time, unfortunately. So I think the waiver of that is a slippery slope for us to go down. And I think this board needs to have a more general conversation as to the serving of alcohol at town properties and our relative comfortability without prejudicing a specific application. And
Yes,
in this case, you folks, which unfortunately, the timing on this just didn't, I don't think worked out well. So rather than deny it, does anyone want to withdraw the motion or deny?
No, we have a motion.
We have a
We can
motion.
just vote and deny.
It could be. You're going to deny without prejudice, right?
Sure.
Okay. So there is a motion on the table. Call the question, all in favor? Opposed?
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Without
Nay. Without prejudice.
Without prejudice.
prejudice.
Without prejudice. Recusals? No, maybe it was unanimous.
Yeah, I think without prejudice allows them to come back.
Sure,
Exactly,
that's the
that's my point.
Somehow that it really touches every base.
Good.
Maybe by next year you'll have your new
Yeah,
building.
it won't be an issue. I think it'll be done hopefully by July, if
Whatever.
you're saying,
Looks like it's
projecting.
moving along
We'll
fast.
see.
Thank you for taking
Well,
the time
thank
to
you
do it.
anyway.
We
I
appreciate
appreciate
it.
it. Hope to see you there.
15.5, act on an annual request from the Guilford Community Fund to place its campaign sign on the southwest corner of the green. Is there a motion?
So moved.
And a second. Second?
It wasn't on my agenda for what it's worth, but I'll say okay.
It isn't?
No, I don't have it either, I don't think. What was the organization, I'm sorry?
Guilford Community Fund to place its campaign sign on the
Oh,
southwest
yeah.
It
corner
is
of the
on
green.
here, it's on ours someplace. I know, I read it.
Yeah? Good.
But it's not
Should be there.
55.
It's not Art Registry.
Yeah.
I may have left it.
Oh, yeah, that's what it is. It's on the emailed agenda.
Oh, it's on the
That's it.
agenda, I
Oh,
see.
okay. That's what it was.
All right.
That's all.
All right, so we gotta pass it though.
Yeah.
Yeah, as long as it's on the agenda.
Yeah.
It's just
It's
that
on
doesn't
the
happen to
agenda.
be on our
It's
electronic
It's
version.
been moved and seconded.
Seconded.
Call the question. All in favor?
Aye. Sorry for
Opposed,
that.
abstained,
That's the
recused, hearing
version.
none, motion carried. 16, committee reports. Sandy, anything?
Not at the
Nothing,
moment.
nothing since
Nothing
last
negative, just moving along.
night? All right. And,
We're in business. I neglected to ask Chief Hershaft when he was in how they're doing, but I'll call them offline.
okay, well, we had health department and,
Yes.
and fire, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. To be determined, right? 17, correspondence, the letter from Robinson Cole, everyone have a chance to take a look at that? This is similar to the one
I remember
that we
this.
had on the small cell across,
Yeah.
across from Pages.
Yes.
We have limited ability to impact that decision. Aesthetics, et cetera, is not the pure regulations basically.
frankly, they
tie our
weren't that
hands.
bad.
And actually, they're federal, they're FCC regulations as well,
Oh.
that are passed down through Pure. So Pam and I've had the discussion, we're not gonna contest this. It does not warrant rising to that level, so.
Just bring to your attention, that,
Right.
you know.
It's happening.
This one isn't a replacement of a pole. Sometimes it's just to attach. This is replacing the pole and attaching. So you're gonna get just a taller pole.
Okay.
Cool. Just so you know.
Thank you. All right, any old business? New business?
Trace?
You have to add that.
Yeah, we're gonna do that in a second. Public forum, anyone wishing to address the board in public forum? No? We also need to add an item to the executive session, which is item 21, and that would be to discuss and take possible action on property negotiations to acquire a parcel of land.
Which were those maps that were in
Said,
the Twin Bridge? We did.
Here we go.
Somewhere else. It's on the agenda here.
Yeah, yeah.
Shoot me.
no.
The lawyer in us.
Okay, is there a motion to add that?
bridge-
to the
some
agenda?
bridge too far.
Some other location that
Yes.
will remain nameless.
That's right. Is there a motion to
So
add it?
moved.
And a
Second.
Call the question.
So move what Lou said.
Call the question, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, recusals, hearing none, motion carries. Is there a motion to go into executive session, and for the purposes of the first item, on the to-be-named property, I'd like to invite Kevin McGee, Gary McKelney, and Pam Millman into that meeting.
Second.
Second, call the question, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstained, recusals, hearing none, motion carries. Mike, we'll come back to close the meeting.
Special server.
Is there a motion to come out of executive session?
So move.
Second.
Call the question, all in favor?
Aye.
Two items we discussed in executive session, the first of which related to property negotiations. Is there a motion to allow the Land Acquisition Committee and Town Council to move to the contract phase for the said property?
So moved.
Second. Any further discussion? Call the question, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, recusals, hearing none, motion carries. The other item related to a settlement claim, and based on Attorney Barrett's recommendation that we accept the settlement as described in the documentation we have been provided. Is there a motion to do so?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Call the question, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstained, recusals, hearing none, motion carries. With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
And a second?
Second.
Call the question, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, recusals, hearing none, motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.